Interesting. Thank you so much for joining us for the Q2 podcast sponsored by Penvisio. I'm your host, Joel Lopez, and I am grinning, smiling from ear to ear because what started off as a rant turned into a conversation, then turned into a podcast episode. Just like that. How's your Friday doing? That's what my Friday is great because this is happening. But Yarima, thank you so much for joining. What's going on in your end?
Hey, I'm good. I appreciate you reaching out, and I wanted the viewing audience to kind of get a gauge from your perspective because I've been on here a couple of days, and like you said, this is kind of how you and I met, which is beautiful. How the universe makes things happen that people can come along and really dialogue and have substantive conversation. So I put out kind of my political views on why I felt like it was a waste of time to vote, and you came back and hit some points. And so because I think that this is an open forum, what I do and what you do,
Yeah.
I wanted my viewing audience, because a lot of times they're in agreement with me, but there are always those who have their own, their own way that they look at things. And that's beautiful because everybody shouldn't look at things the same way. So I wanted to get your perspective in terms of my viewing audience and what you think the political process is, how important it is for you.
Yeah, for sure. So just for listeners who might not have the context of what we're talking about, Yarima did an impassioned video and used an analogy of how your vote is like money. And based on, on what kind, if you don't like what the Hillary store is giving you and you don't like what the Trump store is giving you, you don't have to vote because voting is like money. And I'm going to be honest, Yarima, I'm going to keep it exactly 100% transparent.
Please do.
It pissed me off to no end.
Okay.
And so that's why before we kick off anything else, I did that rant. I sent that video. I shared it. And it's so a lot of respect for you for, allowing this to happen because you don't have to do this. And the power of social media, so it's amazing what this can do.
Yes.
So I figured let's give them context on that and start from that. Do you want to kick it off and kind of do a summary of why you feel like it's you shouldn't cast your vote for either party if you don't like what both are selling?
Well, my position, and I'll reiterate it again real brief. My position is that specifically, I'm gonna, since we're being candid, and let's keep it candid. My position is that specifically with Black and Latino communities, it seems like our vote is solicited once every 4 or 8 years, depending on how long someone is in office. But we never really see any results from that. And there's a lot of promises that go into when politicians come to solicit us. And first of all, let me clarify that when I was talking about voting, I was specifically talking about on a national level. I'm talking about with the president, and that I have no problem with people voting on a local level. I think that that's important because you can actually have an impact on your local level. But as far as when we're talking president, I think that they give a lot of promises that they never specifically with as concerns Black and Latino populations and communities, they never follow through on those promises. And so my position is that it's a waste. And then when we look at the dynamics of this election, we're talking Trump, we're talking Hillary. And I think I talked a little history specifically behind Hillary. I didn't do too much analogy on Trump, but because I think Trump speaks for himself.
Yeah.
I did a little bit on Hillary and just some of the things that her husband did while he was in office, and then some of the history with her as far as her one of her mentors being Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, and I don't want to go into all of that, but that was my analogy that basically the vote was a waste, and that if we're going to give our vote, then we need some guarantees, some promises that are actually going to come to fruition if we're going to give it. And that's why I made the analogy, the vote is like money. I'm not just going to go into a store and spend my money on anything just because I'm allowed to spend my money. You need to be selling something that is going to benefit me, or a product that I at least like. And so that was kind of the breakdown. And now I would like to turn it over to you,
Sure.
because I haven't heard from you too much. I did read some of the feed and commentary that you gave back, and I thought it was, you had some valid points there. So
yeah, and just to kick things off too on my side, I made an error on one of my on a point that I was trying to make, and that was like, if you don't vote, then you run the risk of being the worst of the two. And obviously, Yarima, the analogy and the parallels between Donald Trump and a Hitler regime, and how
yes.
he is rising to power. And I made the incorrect statement that Hitler was voted in. So for the record, I want to own it, because that's the type of person I am, that if I'm wrong on a fact, I want to kind of own it. So Hitler was not voted in. So it diluted my point, but the point still remains that, out of respect for the civil rights movement, what we've gained through that, I felt like it's our obligation. Maybe not obligation, because our rights are free. We can free to do whatever we want, in a sense. But that when it comes to voting, there, in my opinion, my position is that there is such a thing as a lesser of two evils on this one. And I think if we kind of took them side by side, even in the context of Hillary and her track record, anything is better than Trump. And just to avoid that, it's not even voting for Hillary, it's voting against Trump. Even that gives us just this much of improvement, or a step in the right direction, to kind of keep the fight going. Because my belief is that by not voting, that's not a radical move. It's not. There's no. I don't really see any power behind that. And in fact, we're giving away our power, and we do that already, as much as it is. So that was kind of like the essence behind my point. But to get a better understanding, because I want to make sure I understand you completely on this piece, is what do you think that they're equals in terms of how crappy of a candidates they are for president, or do you think one is worse than the other?
Well, my position is that, and what you say makes complete sense if I believe and others believe that one is actually going to do something. If I believe that the president really runs the country, if I believe that, then what you say has a lot of validity to it, and I can't dispute that. The problem is I don't believe that. I believe that International Monetary Fund. I believe that the Rothschilds. I believe that the big bankers are the puppet masters and pull the strings. Now, and I believe that even with Barack in office. And I even made a statement the other day, because a guy asked. He said, and I think he just assumed that I voted for Barack. Mm. And I let him know that under no uncertain terms, I like Barack, and I liked Barack, and I thought that, and I will admit, I'll be the first to admit that I was exceptionally pleased to have the first Black American in office.
On our dime, absolutely.
I will buy that. However, I have a good friend whose father is an activist in Chicago. And I respect this man. He's been an activist his whole life, and he's walked hand in hand and worked on some serious issues with Barack. And before that election, he made it clear to me and a few others, Barack is nothing more than a politician. So although I like Barack and I wanted him in office, I wouldn't vote for him. Because again, I have to believe that the president is the president. And I just don't believe that. Now, if somebody can give me some clarity, maybe it's you, Joed, that that they are actually the people in power that can make changes, I might go for that, but I don't believe it.
Let's deep dive on that, because I think there might be one piece that you might be missing, or I'm not really communicating effectively on, and it's this: if voting for Hillary Clinton gives us X amount of time more to keep the fight going, I will take that. If not voting enables a vote for Trump, which thus might in turn lead to a more forceful, more efficient, systematic oppression of Black and brown people, I'll do anything to buy us a little more time, even if it happen. Whether it could happen on both their watches, but if under Hillary's watch we can hold off just a little bit longer, or just for whatever reason, if it can, the assumption is it will be less likely or less as fast or efficient, I'll go that route just for the sake of the struggle that we're fighting against, and giving us that much more, I guess, buffer or wiggle room to keep going. I just don't realize how people can forget how fast Hitler really was able to kind of absorb power, even as a chancellor position, when he was chancellor. And it took people kind of disengaging and turning the other way. And that's all I'm saying. If the voting for Hillary slows that machine down, even if Hillary is not really down really for us, then I'll take that. I'll cast my vote, because to even get to the table to vote, a lot of people paid a price, and I feel dirty inside just even talking about it. The thought of not voting, and the price that was paid for that, I'm not cool with that. So that was kind of like my iteration on that. So I agree with you 100% that they're never going to deliver. They rarely will. I mean, there is. I mean, some people can argue that Barack Obama's presidency, in some steps, made the country better, and there's some communities with health, who are black and brown communities, that have health care that normally would not have it otherwise without his policies. So regardless of where you land on Barack Obama and his effectiveness as a president for the United States, or even for black and brown people for that matter, regardless of where you land on that, I think there can be a statement made that, something is better than nothing. And I wasn't even putting that much weight on them anyways. I just don't want Trump to win.
Okay. Now, so, and again, Joey, and for the viewers that are just tuning in, I'm talking with good brother Joey Lopez. We're having this candid discussion pertaining to the elections. My position is we don't have an obligation to vote. His position is that we should vote for someone. So I would pose a couple things, Joey, that I think are important. One being, and I don't know if a lot of people even remember. I don't think that the analogy with Hitler is a fair one, in the sense that we're talking about two different countries, but we're also talking about two different political regimes, as opposed to Germany in the early to mid 1900s and the U.S. right now. My point being is that if we do a historical analysis, the Republican Party wasn't the party that really implemented slavery. That was the Democratic Party, and I mean, this is historical fact. The Republicans were not the initial Southern slave regime holders, one. And two is, if we're going to cast a vote, are you saying we squander it if we go with a third party, like a Jill Stein or these other third-party candidates that are available?
Not at all. And to that point, I feel like voting for, even for a radical third party, something is better than nothing. So, voting for someone is better than nothing, because, and to the point about the historical fact, and you're right, there's always going to be parallels and things that don't work when you compare this to Hitler and his rise. And some might seem like, oh, that's extreme. Trump is not Hitler. It's not going to be not even close. There are some parallels that are a little scary. Absolutely. But without even that being said, to your point, is a totally different context. The broader point is that all democracies have a vulnerability for this kind of internal implosion to an authoritarian regime. If he were able to get the sympathies of the military, which we can assume he does in large pockets, especially on the lower end of the ranks, we don't realize in historical perspective how quick regimes can turn. And so I don't even want to come close to that. That's why our founding fathers were very diligent in saying, this is not something that we should use the word squander, that we should really, we have to be vigilant in making sure our liberties and our freedom are kept. And it's like, these are the moments when people say that can never happen here. You go to Germany in 1930 something, and you ask the people, what do you think about this Hitler guy? He's crazy. Yeah, he's a little out there. He's a little extreme, but It's not going to happen here. They say the same thing, and the pattern is the same. The lack of apathy and lack of engagement and political awareness and involvement creates the fertile ground for a shift and a target. Now, Yarima, you and I already know we're practically there anyways.
Yeah.
When it comes to our civil liberties and our freedoms and all that stuff. But if we can get some room, just again, that small margin, I want to fight for that, because the people before us, Yarima, fought tooth and nail for their lives and their blood for even just a little bit of ground, and that's precious blood. And I don't want to disparage that by saying no. So I'd rather someone vote for a third party that, even if it has the probability of 1% for it to work, respect, because the few people who make in history, change happens in a few, in small pockets. And if that's you, vote for that third party, because you never know. That could be the path.
Okay, so a viewer just hit me and said, well, if voting for a third party is might as well be voting for Trump. I guess.
What do you think about that?
Well,
I could see that too. I could see the argument being made is just might as well give it to Trump. But at least I see, at least you're voting your values. At least you're voting. At least. Well,
I to a certain extent, so we know that there are some variables here. There are, you got the Electoral College.
Yeah.
Got a lot of states where the vote is not going to count because the Electoral College is going to play.
Correct.
But we also have, and there's a few different ways, Joed, to look at this. One thing that I want to point out is that as bad as we might look at a Donald Trump, the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump doesn't have a record as far as being a president. Hillary Clinton kind of does, because she backed policies that her husband. Now, when we look at her husband, and the facts are the facts, more blacks and Latinos were locked up under Bill Clinton's watch than any president in the history of the country. Now, he might have sweetened the pot and made it look like, made himself look sweet, to where we kind of, for the short term, we thought it was a good thing, but we see the long-term effects of that. Absolutely. And so one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to get sidewinded by Hillary Clinton, who comes in, who people are saying, okay, in the event to block Trump, let's get her. And then she comes in with some subtle policies, just like her husband, but they have long-term effects 30 and 40 years from now. And we come to find out that, wow, we just got bamboozled again because Clinton has been there before now. Yeah. And she's been a senator. So she's held some public office to where we actually can kind of gauge her politics, as opposed to Donald. Now, I'm not saying Donald is the answer. Don't get me wrong. But, I mean, what do you say to that as far as the policies themselves? Because at the end of the day, if I'm telling people vote, there has to be some accountability. Like, okay, if we vote, Yarima, and they don't give us, or nothing trickles down, and I used that term the other day, then what's it all for? So what would you say to that?
It's a great question. Two quick points to that. One, I think there is some post-traumatic stress that has some residue with the Clintons, and that's very real, and then we have to acknowledge that.
Yes.
And it's complete BS. We were bamboozled by Clinton, both Clintons, historically, and to date, on the record, Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, which, by the way, that whole legislation that led to locking up so many black and brown people have come together and said, yeah, we overstretched on that one and apologized. So whether you think that's a legitimate apology or regret or not, that did happen, and they acknowledged that. And now we are where we are, and we can't do nothing about that. We are where we are. So I don't want to frame our future through the lens of the past, because I use the analogy of driving a car. Like, you don't drive forward by looking at the rear view mirror. You definitely want to check what's behind you, but to move us forward, we have to look forward. And that's one point to that. And to the point of like the responsibility of, fundamentally it comes down to this. We can be bamboozled like crazy, and the person that we should really be scared about is Hillary. We have to vote with what we got now, what we know now, and that's all we can do. What information do we have now that can give us the best decision for the future? And as it stands to date, in light of the Clintons' history, and by the way, let's be real, Bill is not going to be president. Hillary is going to be president. And so I don't feel it's 100% fair to say Hillary because Bill can't or did X, Y, and Z. I don't want to do that too much, you know.
Okay.
So that's my thing. It's like I agree. There's some hesitation. There's some real like issues with that. Absolutely. But you know, at the end of the day, I still, even with that looming, I think that is still better than Trump. I still think so. Because we have been breaking down a little bit. We made some progress, and I have an episode on this 2 weeks ago about the breaking down the prison industrial complex, and especially with youth juvenile detention centers. Like, we are making some progress in that area. So those things can be, and I 100% believe will be undone in years. But for the president's role, we only have one vote, folks, and I don't think not voting is an option for us.
Okay, let me and with when you talk about the prison industrial complex, I that valid point. I don't know that the gains that are making. I do a lot of talking. I
100%
do a lot of talking on the school to prison pipeline that is currently going on, and so we do know that Hillary, you know, made the point about super predators. 2 points I want to make. One is that if I'm president and I'm married, you can best believe my wife is going to. She might not be.
You're right.
Calling the shots, but there are some things we're going to have some bedroom talk.
You're right.
And so Bill is.
You're assuming they sleep together in the same room.
No. Exactly. So, but even more point, I want to ask you what you think about this, because it has been said, and again, if this is the case, I still find it to be very, very underhanded, very deceitful, and very fraudulent. It has been said that the dynamics of this race are the way that they are right now because
of Hillary.
They wanted to pit Hillary against somebody who appears to be such a racist and so far left.
Okay,
she would get the vote.
I see what you're saying.
The first woman. What are your thoughts about that?
So you're talking about, Yarima, social engineering.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you're listening to this right now, and listen, I'm not up on the conspiracy theories and the underground like information on what power decisions and power stakeholders, like you said, bankers and Rothschilds and all those things. I'm not as up as I could be, or maybe as I should be, but I've done some research earlier on years ago. And if you're listening to this and thinking, wow, this is getting kind of crazy, going down the loopy trail, you're a freaking idiot. You have to look at history. You have to look at your sources. There is something to be said about social engineering from major corporations and governments that don't really have real authority, but somehow come to the table and make decisions on our behalf. And you have to look at that as for real. With that said, I have to go back to, you might have seen this from detective shows and stuff like that, where you have to go, the safest thing to do when you're trying to problem solve something or get behind a mystery is start with the most simplistic theory first, then investigate, and then work your way from there. But I think to make that kind of assumption, or if someone believes that this is a massive social engineering ploy, I find it's unlikely that it's that intentional, more so than maybe the bankers on the left and the bankers on the right, really just want to have their side win. And to that extent, I could probably get behind that. But in terms of both of them being played for us, I have that might be a little too much of a leap for me personally. But again, you might be more read up on that than I am.
Okay. Well, I think it was real important that and I respect all views. I respect yours. I really respect yours, Joey, because you reached out, and I think it's good. I think it's good that people can agree to disagree.
Yeah, I agree.
And we're not cussing each other out. We're not, I actually like you. I like your views.
Me too, man. I like you too, man.
And I think that this is important, especially because on a communal level, at the community level, we need to be having these talks. We need to be having this dialogue. Whether a person is actually going to go out and vote, at least the mind is open now to some new avenues, some new forms of thinking. And I respect the fact that you say, when you make the comparison between Hillary and Trump, it's like, hey, we got to vote to keep him out. It still doesn't change my position.
Hey, it is what it is, and that's okay. But I at least if it gets your listeners and your audience members to at least think, and reconsider, or that, I think that is a step in the right direction. But you're on Facebook Live right now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll be interesting to do a poll right now, because I think this is one of the things that came up on the stream when you were doing it and I was on it, was that they don't want to discuss. We're getting into the points about using that analogy, like the analogy of money and votes was a wrong analogy, because money has a market, and markets mean exchanges and competition, and we only have one president. And so I was making these points. Some people are saying, well, I don't discuss this with people who are not black. And it's a very interesting thing to me, because I'm still landing on these things and growing and evolving.
Okay.
What if for people who are listening on your Facebook Live, what would they consider Latinos as part of that people group that should be united to kind of fight this thing and fight oppression and fight for systematic equality? Or is this something that should be a separatist thing? Like African Americans have their own unique history, and Latinos should really kind of fight the system on their own and in their own ways. What's your stance on that? And maybe a field Facebook Live. Like, do they think Latinos should partner with African Americans to fight together on these issues? It's a heavy question, I know, but
and I think it's a great question. My personal stance is this, Joey, and we're live, we're keeping it real, we're talking. It's a great dialogue. I'm going to do my part. For my people, because at the end of the day, I think that a lot of times things are ignored, things aren't said. There's no real discussion, no real dialogue. There's no real historical analysis. There's no upliftment. And we need that more in the Black community. We need unification, more upliftment in our community than anything. With that said, from a spiritual standpoint, I get that we are all interconnected. Yeah. So, and I also get that at the end of the day, all of us have to make that concerted effort. And because at the end of the day, if it just the sheer numbers mathematically, we outnumber all the people outnumbered. So we outnumber all the politicians, we outnumber all the police. So from that standpoint, it's imperative that we come together. And I see how the media and how these different outlets try to play us against each other. And we fall for it, we go
all
for it.
The time, yeah.
But at the same time, with that said, there are some real issues, some real racial issues, some real issues that separate us as groups. And this is Black and Latino. This is Black and white. This is Black and Asian. This is Latino and white. This is, so there's a whole bunch of different things that separate us. So I think each group has to get theirs right. They have to get their group right. When people I get inboxes all the time from white people, and they're like, what can I do? What can I do? Because I listen to you. I see the plight that Black people are going through. And even some of them say, hey, I get privileged because of white skin. Yeah. And they say that. So they're like, what can I do? And I always tell them the same thing. Go back, have those conversations, sit down in those groups, overstand that you're going to lose some friends along the way. But that's not a bad thing, because you're going to get a chance to figure out who's who. But you have to sit down at the table and have those conversations. And so there's no disconnection and disunity with us, bruh.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do have to teach our people. We do,
Yeah.
and it's important.
And the reason why I asked that, and can you? I don't want to take. I want to be respectful of your time. You good for a couple more minutes still?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool, man. And the reason why I asked this because we know, especially since that Latino in America series came out, Afro-Latino identities have been, more and more coming to surface in terms of how people identify with their Afro heritage in Latino circles, and what even Caribbean, even Latin America, even Mexicans.
Yes.
They're more and more identifying like, hey, I'm Afro-Latino, and with that said, it becomes a very interesting point because at one hand, we do hear some circles say, hey, if you're the only separation between me and you is a boat ride, right? I'm Puerto Rican,
Right.
and when they dropped us off, it was in this Caribbean, and when they dropped you off, it was in America, and so that's the only difference, And so there's that's becoming more and more prominent. And to be honest, when I think about a black and brown united front, with not so much saying, hey, I'm Boricua and I'm fighting for the struggle with my African American friends. It's more like, no, I'm Boricua, but I know the blood that runs in it eventually goes back to Africa, and so I'm Afro Latino, and I'm real with that, and that's not like a separation so much a acknowledgement of holding a bicultural identity almost, and they're equal in weight. So my struggle with that is it's a crazy thought to think what can happen if that were to kind of meld together in one united front. Having said that, you're exactly right. Historically speaking, there's no other people group in the world's history that has suffered as the African American, or again overall Africans of color overall. So that has to be real. I guess one last question too is a lot of this talk is I hear about threads of Pan-Africanism, and obviously there's a spectrum with that.
Yes.
It's sad to me that the first time I heard of Pan-Africanism was from Dr. Umar Johnson.
Yes.
That was the first time I heard of it. And obviously, some of the things he says are kind of crazy out there sometimes. But is there a reason? What's your take on Pan-Africanism as a ideology, and why is it name dropped some more? Because a lot of people are talking about the same stuff, but not really naming it. And I think it could hold us back from not really being intentional with uniting people and getting people around the same ideas.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, and I like what you just said about the Afro-Latino connection, because I think that historically, for the conscious, we've been knowing that. Mm-hmm. We've been knowing that, and it's kind of like trying to get people on board. I remember I had a very good friend. And he was actually he was affiliated with the Latin Kings, mm-hmm. and he was not only affiliated, but he was one of the top leaders. And he said his thing is teaching his people where they come from. Mm. And he said when he used to teach classes, it was such a surprise, like really, and he was adamant about we might be Puerto Rican here, but we come from a lineage of Africa. Yeah. And he was adamant about pushing that. As far as the Pan-African movement, that isn't Pan-Africanism. That isn't a new term.
No.
It's around for centuries.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, you can go back as far as Marcus Garvey, the Garveyite movement. And that sort of thing. So I think that it's something that we need to look at, but not only look at, study, research, but also before we get to that, because you got the conscious minds who are there, but the conscious minds have to teach because everybody's not there. Mm-hmm. And that's the point. This thing has step, stages, and degrees to it, which is why I'm so like with the vote. And I get your point. We're kind of on two different, and I fully understand, and I believe that you understand my point as well. Yeah. But I think that there's step, stages, and degrees that we all have to work. So there are certain people that they're not going to get it. but they have to be they have to be brought up to that point. And the same thing in the Latino community. There are certain people who aren't going to get it, but there are certain conscious minds that do and have had it for years and have been trying to teach their people like, yo, this is it. We're one people. What are you doing? There is no separatism. And so, you know,
it's a hard thing to balance because it's, you said, the spiritual side, we're all one.
Yeah.
But history is a little different though, and our lineage and our experiences. And it's tough. I'm still struggling with that too, my man. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, and then we have to come to the understanding, and this is it, Joed, that there's been a big trick that was played, and we've been caught up in it. And so what happens is that when the history keeps going by, and new generations, and if there aren't griots there to pass down that lineage, to pass down that history, it gets diluted. And so, you know, there's a lot of trickery that is played into this. And if we really knew who we were, if we really knew the power we have, especially as a group, if we really knew the interconnection that we have on a spiritual level, there could be, and I'm always saying that there could be nothing that could stop us, man.
Yeah, well, Garvey, the fact that he was able to mobilize so many people without Twitter, without Facebook, without all those things, it's really no excuse when you get one people under one unification, and it's a very powerful thing. So with that said, I wanted to kind of just do a plug on your stuff. I'm always we could probably come back to this and do this another time too, because I would love to have you on again and dice up these things some more. But you know, you're artist.
Yeah.
You're doing some. I saw your website. You know, where can people find you for my end on what your work you're doing on? And you know, is the album released or are you still working on it? I thought I saw a video saying you're still working on it. But where can people find you?
Well, they can go to my webpage, www.yarimakarama.com. That's YARIMAKARAMA.com. They can go there for messaging, booking info there. If they want to find out my performance dates and locations, I will also post on there when my album is coming out. It should be within, as a matter of fact, the producer, I just put up a post today. The producer he just finished. Nice. I should be releasing that within the next couple of weeks at the very latest. I'm hoping before then, but even more so, I know you do this as well and would love to team up with you, but they can go there for booking for, you know, I do speaking engagements, motivational speaking, universities, colleges, high school. So I travel around the country. I'm a spoken word artist, hip hop artist, but I'm an activist, and I believe in community upliftment. I believe in community empowerment. I believe in community growth and economics. So that's the platform. That's what I push. And I think that we need to get to a point where we connect, and Absolutely. we're working together and moving. But both communities have issues that both communities need to deal with, and that's real.
For sure.
So that's where you can find me, and also my Facebook, Twitter, IG. I always say connect with me, never follow me, because I don't believe you should be following anybody, but we can always connect, we can always network, we can always grow and build.
Well, this is how it all started on social media when I asked you to talk. So that's an example of that. You know,
plug yourself as well, Joe.
Oh, well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate that. Listen, my website is panvisio.org, PANVISIO.org. Interviewed cats like Jeffrey Canada, who was featured on Waiting for Superman, to white anti-racist activists like Tim Wise, and higher education folks too, because education is a huge part, and we know we're not getting a lot of consciousness out of K through 12. So a lot of times, higher ed seems to be the last shot for someone to get this stuff. So we do a lot of interviews for that, and also for those who are looking to, who are trying to find a voice, increase their platform. Because you're right, Yarima, like education is so key. when people understand the history behind this, it's like a light bulb that comes up, and then that leads to action. So if you're looking to, like, increase your platform, increase your voice and your reach, that's where it comes down to, is like your website, your social media. What's the strategies to expand that reach? And so I only help social change organizations and activists with those things. So panvisio.org is the website. The Q2 podcast is, you find the tab there, or find it on iTunes for actionable interviews that you could walk away with, like actual things you can do and apply in your community. That's the goal for the Q2 podcast. So thanks so much for asking. And Yarima, if you're in the Philly area, man, come by, man.